So let's get to it. It's not a secret that as we age, our sleep cycles change. If you can think of new parents who have children, or when you were a child, they have different needs and wants. And then as they grow up, or you grow up and become a younger adult, there are some different needs and some different pattern changes. And then as we become older, then the needs change as well. And so there's an interesting connection here, which will help you all relate to each of these. So, starting with the bala, so that's our childhood age. There are these weird cravings that might be little signals to how our needs are changing, internal needs, and that could be cold milk or fruit snacks, lemonade, cookies, chewing gum. All of these satisfy the internal needs that we're having. And too much of these things, though, or these things at inappropriate times, usually bedtime cravings, then our malas become affected. So in this case, purisha, the stools, so constipation, can occur with too much of these things. And then if it's not taken care of, it can kind of snowball into sensitivities. And that could specifically mean for this age group temperature sensitivities. So, getting too hot, too cold, just being super sensitive to temperature change. And that affects the sleep as well. And then it snowballs even further to Agni dysfunction, and especially Vishama Agni is affected. So we see that manifest in the form of a continuous appetite, like always hungry, always eating. Where does that go? Type of thing. And the main Agni here affected is Sadhaka Agni. So for here, we have the anabolic activation that's affected, specifically the growth hormone in this case. And the dhatus that become affected are mamsa dhatu, the intracellular fluid, specifically the synovial fluid. And the main srota affected is mamsa, so the liver specifically, which is so important to help kind of flush out those toxins. And if not taken care of, still the sandhi or joints can get affected. And specifically for this age group, the cervical vertebrae, so right in the back of the neck, is very sensitive and it's developing. And so that is kind of the primary area which it affects. And there you have the effects on sleep. So in this case, children, or when you're a child, or your own children get disturbed with the slightest interruptions, you have to tiptoe around them, keep it very silent, make sure the temperature is right, etc. And when this happens, when they wake up, instead of feeling refreshed and rejuvenated, how we should be feeling when we wake up, then there's that constipated feeling where it's everything just stuck, and no one likes to be constipated, and no one is nice when they're constipated. So you can think of for children, temper tantrums, things like that. It's just because they're feeling uncomfortable inside. And so what do we do here? The karma, which we need, the action is anulomana. So, kind of like a releasing downward type of action. And that can be obtained with a rasayana dravya, a rejuvenative substance. And in this case, the choice would be yashti madhu. Then we'll move on to the young adult, Javan age. So the weird cravings here are ice cream, fruit punch, Oreos, milk chocolate. Mullahs get affected, specifically the mutra, urinary flow, and the sensitivities come about specifically to noise. So getting irritable with any kind of noise disturbances, very sensitive to those. Agni gets affected. So we see the manda agni here, and that is a low appetite. So, skipping meals, not a big thing, but it is a big indicator into what is kind of snowballing and things that are happening. So the rhythm of the sadhaka agni is affected, and that's specifically the catabolic activation, cortisol, which it's also known as a stress hormone. So we see, easily getting stressed, etc. So this is just keep snowballing, still not taken care of, and we're just gravitating to these weird type of cravings for short-term benefit, or just kind of helping us to relax, then that will be short-lived, and we will see the dhatus affected, specifically rasa dhatu, the intercellular fluid. So for in this case, it's the muscle vein system. So you can think of a lot of tension, specifically in the shoulders. They kind of get tight, the aorta, the srota affected. So could be some heart flutters, that anxiety, the feeling of not being calm and just kind of agitated, and snowballs to having tension specifically in the Vayasthanda Sandhi, so the condylar joint, specifically the jaw, the Shanka Asti. So the whole jaw up from here all the way down. So you might see like teeth grinding, tension in the jaw when waking up. That is because it is now affecting the sleep and specifically the reduction in quality. So, not so much the quantity. Sometimes people can sleep for 10 hours and still not feel content and feel refreshed. And that's a big indicator. Generally, they wake up feeling groggy. And so, what are we going to do here? Karma Mutrala, we need help with the urine formation because that's a key factor in reducing some of these toxins. And so, there was Rasayana Dravya, rejuvenative dravya of choice is Gokshura. And then lastly, we'll move on to the Vruddha age group. So the elderly adults, or that transition from the younger adult to being a little bit older adult, when things are changing in the body, hormones, etc. This is happening continuously. As you know, we talked about Sadhaka Agni, and that is in charge of the processing of those neurohormones. So in the elderly or getting older, the weird cravings here are hot milk, like, I need something hot to drink, like, specifically at nighttime, but also maybe to start off the day. A dessert bar, so think like a brownie or a magic bar, some kind of bar because that texture is what they're craving. Chocolate covered nuts, same thing, very satiating. And then popsicles as well, just something cool and fruity, zesty. And so these different tastes and textures are what they start gravitating to, and then the malas that become affected with too much or excess of these things, because again, it's short-lived, would be sweda, the perspiration. So it could be, less perspiration leading to dry skin. So as you know, as we get older, the skin, loses its moisture. So that gets affected. Then the pressure sensitivity arises. For example, someone might say, "Oh, can you like sit on my feet or walk on my back?" Or they feel good with a little weighted blanket, etc. So those are all signals of these pressure sensitivities that are coming up. And then we have Agni get affected. So Tikshna Agni is what we see here. They have a sporadic appetite. Like before it used to be meal times, I'm hungry, I have a nice appetite. Now it's more like, oh, kind of eat, throughout the day, or I'm not hungry now, might skip a meal, might eat at weird times throughout the day, might even wake up at night and eat something. So that's a sign of Tikshna Agni. And then Sadhaka Agni, which is in charge of the processing of the neurohormones, we see the catabolic activation affected here as well. But in this case, it's the glucagon processing and activation. And so as a result, we have the dhatus affected, specifically Majjadhatu, the nervous fluid, the blood plasma specifically. And then for the srota, if you think about the channels, we have the coronary artery, which is key and of course affects the heart, and then the sandhi, which is affected the hinge joints. So all the hinge joints you can think of, but it's specifically the knee, like having something to stand on, all of that kind of comes into effect here. So the sleep, we see it being sporadic timing. So think about, oh, just kind of fell asleep anywhere, anytime, was sitting there watching TV and just fell asleep. So you see that more in the elderly. And for the a little bit kind of transitioning from younger adult to older adult, it's more like, kind of just feeling sleepy, even though, there was sufficient hours of sleep, but the quality again is still not there. And so, anytime, any place, it's either feeling sleepy or just actually falling asleep. And then for waking up feeling irritable. So if all of these things kind of are continuing, they do affect the sleep, which does affect the age, of course, the aging process. And so the karma, which we need here is shamana, pacifying. So if you remember, we talked about those weird type of cravings. Those are all very pacifying in nature. The different tastes and textures. So for here, it's hinting at we need a shamana karma, and for that, the rasayana dravya of choice is Vidari Kanda. So all of these three rasayana dravyas, those are called rasayanas because they are age defying. That's the best kind of translation, but really they're rejuvenating to the specific needs of that time in your life. And so hopefully that was helpful